Cool. Like the
This year.
Bluetooth.
We'll see how the store does this year. I'm getting all new shirts. So we'll see how it goes.
I haven't ever seen a shirt except the one Pam had on.
Yeah, well, a buddy of mine that does aquariums, he's a printer also, and he did some quick, just small shirts for me, and we're gonna probably use them.
Well,
And
we may want to use them also because we don't have shirts either.
I'll talk to Joey about it and give me your number. Sure. Yeah. What was that? Oh, it's okay. There's a piece of paper, but you don't have to check in. Just because they have to keep notes for meetings because they're a nonprofit club. So they have to keep all their member meetings and people that attended and all that stuff. It's by law.
Everybody has a good seat and quiet. Silence on the stage.
All right, everybody, welcome to our first Water Garden Club of 2024. We have a great lineup for y'all this year. We have a new board, and I want William Rudder to stand up or wave his hand. William is our new vice president, and he also knows a whole lot about plants. So he'll be giving us a lecture later in the year about water lilies. Also, we have a new, very enthusiastic, energetic membership chair, and Edie Edwards back there. And she's got a really nice pond and an earphone. So everybody wants an earphone. And then Dwayne is our new official secretary. He's also taking notes. Yay!
No applause, just send money.
No, you send money to Bruce. Yeah, not to Dwayne. Send money to Bruce, our treasurer. And of course, we still have our two special events wondermen, Larry and Keith. And we have new hospitality help for Darlene. We're going to be eating good. We're going to actually have notes for our meetings. And we're going to get new members. And we have people, yes.
Isn't Christina in a position and Marvin over here in a position? And
Hospitality with Darlene.
yeah, co-chairman of that.
Right. Al's getting a Martin.
Okay. And also don't forget our.
And we have a great announcement about Marvin. He finished his scorekeeper certification. And I think there's only one person in Texas who has passed that certification. All right? I looked on the list and I didn't see anyone else but you.
Is that for like grading or just in general hobby keeping or?
Just hobby keeping, health. It's like,
The only other one that I know, the only other one that I know was taking that was Melanie Oblender, but I don't think she ever finished it.
Yeah.
She went back to work though, that's why. So,
He actually took his test and is
yeah.
certifiable.
All right.
We're happy. This question, you can ask Margaret, or you can
you
ask.
call Gary.
Yeah. If you call me, I'll direct you to Marvin.
And then after that, you can Google it. Well, today, Gary is going to talk to us about pond lighting. How difficult is it to put lighting in your pond, or on top of the pond, or around your pond, and also water features. You know, there are all kinds of waterless water fountains and bogs that I have no clue about. So he's just going to give us a little tip. And then with this freezing weather, William lost 40 pounds of fish
40 pounds of tropical and subtropical food.
this weekend. So no bueno. Look at tilapia you can put in your freezer.
I was that was a comment that was made, and that would have been true if I have taken the plastic that was on the pond off the pond to get to them, but
They were already rotting.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they smell, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But no, they would have made great turtle food, or even people food.
You blend them and put them in your garden.
I did that with some of the cichlids.
Yeah.
Let the raccoons eat them.
Yeah.
But I chose to throw them away today because they're 40 pounds of fish, and my neighbors would have probably everybody they can think of to come to my backyard that I don't want to come to my backyard.
Are you raising cichlids?
Well, I mean, I have less than I did.
Sure, of course.
I also I do still have tilapia, just not in that. So that was my biggest pond.
Were you doing it for aquaponics or?
To sell to people that want to do aquaponics.
Okay.
I kind of did some aquaponics, but you know, the tilapia do their job. They eat the algae. And
Yeah.
If you have string algae, couple of tilapia, they will die when it gets cold. So just
Yep.
save them for fish food. But I have videos. You can take a plant or something that has string algae in it, and they're like piranhas, and that's their favorite food is algae.
It's like goats for a pond.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they love, and that's
And they get along with the koi and other fish?
yeah, because they're one of the only cichlids that they'll
Yeah.
eat pellets, but they don't actively eat meat or other fish. So it's a great fish. It also, fun fact, if you're familiar with the Bible story of the fishing all night catching fishes on the Sea of Galilee, those are tilapia. So
Do they multiply?
they
Like rabbits.
Yeah, until it gets 45 degrees, and
Yeah.
then they don't do that anymore. So
Yeah.
you can sex them and get like all females or all males, but they're real cool because they're a cichlid that keeps their babies in the mouth. So it's cool to see like the adults and the babies
Yeah.
pop out.
It's pretty neat. Something real quick before we go into this that I want to do. I need cards or something from the club for your membership cards because we put in 40 plus features a year, and if you want membership, when I give people their warranty cards, I will give them a packet, so to speak, for membership into the clubs and stuff like that,
That's a
so I
great
can
idea.
pass out.
I appreciate it. Wonderful.
Okay, I was thinking about that yesterday.
I'm gonna
So
let Gary take it over.
okay. So there's a lot to get into with landscape lighting. So I did the slideshow is just to stay simple right now and just kind of a basic introduction and some ideas with it. The biggest thing going into landscape lighting, if you're, I don't know, questions, I guess, first, like, are you wanting to talk more about the pond lighting in the landscape or the landscape lighting? Okay. All right. So pond lighting, I'm gonna skip a couple slides real quick there. There's a lot of manufacturers. You can find lighting on Amazon, Home Depot, all these. Of course, it's gonna shift, sorry. There it is. I prefer a light that is completely housed so that you can't replace the bulb, you can't take it apart. Every fixture I've ever used where you can take a cap off, replace the bulb inside, it leaks. Over time, whether it's algae, calcium, just general rot, they're gonna fail. The only light that we use, particularly on the market right now, is from Aquascape. A lot of people over the years just don't like Aquascape. They've heard negative things, whether it's from the store, whether it's online or whatever. Hands down, it's the best light on the market.
They do their research.
They do. There's something that most people don't know and how they do their research, it is not them doing it in-house. It is they do it with contractors. So they're doing it with the people that are using it in the field to make it the easiest possible for installation, whether it's homeowner and or contractor. The difference also is your new lighting that is LED lighting, there is what's called a driver inside. That's what lights up that light. You don't have a bulb in an LED light. You have what's called a diode. And so that diode, its worst enemy is heat. A lot of the lights you buy, whether it's at Home Depot, Lowe's, online, that's a LED landscape light or a pond light, the driver is inside of that fixture. Aquascapes is actually in line. So it's away from the fixture. Over the years, they've changed it, and it's separate. So that gives you a longer lifespan on those diodes, and they'll just last forever at that point. Most of the manufacturers, at least on the commercial side, have a 5-year warranty on most of their landscape lights. Much different than when you go to a box store or some of the other like Amazon stuff, where it's a 1-year warranty. And most of the time you don't even get that time frame out of that bulb or that fixture, and they die. So like I said, for what we use, Atlantic is my top, Aquascape's my top light that we use. Colored lights, they vary by manufacturer. From the intensity of the colors, when you want what they call an RGB light, which is red, green, blue, and then they'll combine all the colors off of that, where you get magentas and cyans and stuff like that. The brightest, most intense colors come again from Aquascape. They are the hands down brightest and best lights out there. The difference is the cost. A normal light, like a regular white LED, which are like the one at the far end, they retail for about $80, $79.95. That's standard across the board, online, doesn't matter where it is, sorry. Hopefully that stopped. That's a 1 watt LED. That 1 watt, I'm not very good with slideshows apparently. There we go. The 1 watt LED is good up to about 8.5 watts of a normal light, like an incandescent bulb. That's about how bright it is. We come out to put 10, 12 lights on a stream or in a waterfall area, and some folks think, oh my God, it's gonna look like Wrigley Field. And then you realize once the water's going over it and you get reflections, it's a very subtle light. And I'll show you some pictures in a few of some of those lights that are just 1 watt. We don't use much of anything over 1 watt in a stream or waterfall unless it's a huge feature. On your normal small streams, 1 watt is more than enough. There's 2 different ones that we use that make it very easy to hide. All 3 of these are Aquascape lights. That's a 1 watt, that's a 3 watt, and then this is a 1 watt. When you have larger waterfalls, you have the sheet type waterfalls like you guys have and everything, you can put this light straight up because the beam goes right up and it casts light behind that waterfall. So you get a different reflection and a different kind of shimmer coming off the falls versus when you're doing a spotlight directly at it, and completely different look. On a spotlight, you'll get more shadowing and stuff on the backside, but this one, if you put it under the waterfall and you have trees or anything above it, it will look like a campfire at night. The shimmering like a fire's burning. So really neat in how you can play with some of that and depending on the look you're going for. The larger lights, the 3 watt, there's also a 6 watt. Those ones we usually place in the pond, in the main bowl. When we want to go 6 watt, it's going to be pretty deep. You're going to be well over 5 foot deep pond. That 6 watt is equivalent to a 75 watt bulb. So it's very bright. And when we're installing lights, and let's say you're going to look outside your house and you just want to see a nice feature in the back, everything's facing away in the pond itself. So if you walk up to your pond, all of the lights we'll put in that front wall or in the sides facing opposite directions so that it's never in your eyes. And you'll see the shadowing and stuff that way much better, and even the glimmer in the water from those submerged lights. This particular brand is one of the only ones that detach from the base. So if you have rock inside of your pond on the walls and things like that, you can hide those in the rock. And we use the black waterfall foam to secure them in the rocks. We use the foam because it's easy to break apart if you ever have to replace that light. And just like anything manufactured, you're gonna have things that go out sooner than their warranties. We get them the 1 watt. Sometimes the seal isn't exactly tight. The bulb will burn out and we'll have to go and replace that light. But that's why we have the foam to hold them in place, because then you can just break that out and put a new one in. The wiring and stuff that goes into most of these lights, they've made it super simple, all the brands across the board. It's a plug and play type of end on the light. Just a male and female end, screw them together, and they're solid. Never works. It will fail 100% of the time. It's just a matter of time before water seeps into it. The nuts that are on there are basically like this soft plastic, almost rubber, and they just don't seal. So you have to put a grease inside of those prior to putting them in if you're not cutting the wires. The grease is just Lowe's, Home Depot, any of them have them. It's what's called a dielectric grease. That protects those ends. That'll lengthen your lifespan of those lights.
So, Gary,
Yes.
you're not really trying to seal it then when you're making those connections. You're just trying to protect
The 2 metal prongs and the male and female prongs in there. Not only that, but let's say water does get in, and if it just touches one, it's no big deal. It's going to corrode it a little bit, and eventually it's going to turn green. But if it starts touching and it fills up, it's going to arc, and it'll burn up that wire, and then your light will burn out. And typically, in a lot of the transformers, if you have more of a commercial transformer or higher end residential transformer, they have circuit breakers in them, and it'll be like a light switch or a button that you can push and reset. The minute you reset it, it pops again. You obviously know there's either water or wires touching somewhere, and that's why it's not going to reset for you. So the grease is, I don't like those connections. Again, I'm speaking from contractor side here, not just from a sales side. My suggestion always is to cut the ends off and hardwire. And if you hardwire them in, then you go into where you use the regular grease-filled wire nuts. You have a solid connection at that point. There's no chance of it arcing. As long as you put those wires together correctly, you use the right size wire nuts, now you have a solid connection. Aquascape in particular, because every contractor out there that uses it, whether they're just a normal guy or what they call a CAC, which is a certified aquascape contractor, cut our ends off. Because when we're going around ponds and we're trying to hide them in landscapes and stuff like that, you can't bring all of those lights into one central location. You only have so much wire. So we have to put extra wire around the ponds and then wire it into that wire. So you have to cut the ends. So Aquascape's one of the only manufacturers that once you modify that product, they still warranty it. Because everyone out in the field does it, and they know that. So it makes it really easy to use that product. Atlantic is the other.
Sir,
Yes.
you're saying that the wire nuts are actually good for underwater, the grease?
We don't put anything underwater.
I'm sorry?
We don't do anything underwater.
Okay,
All of your connections are always made outside the water.
but they're water resistant then?
Yes, so those are the same wire nuts that we use in landscape lighting, just general landscape lighting. If I can find it again, sorry. There we
use
go.
those at sprinklers too, right?
Correct.
I've just never used the grease.
So in the sprinkler side, you have those, and then you can also have the covers that go over the caps that are filled with that much grease in them. So yeah, and those usually we use those more on 2-wire systems on irrigation versus the regular just single wire nuts. The regular wire nuts, you'll use them obviously for irrigation valves and things like that.
I put Vaseline in them. Isn't that the same idea?
Vaseline will melt. It's not. It doesn't break down like Vaseline breaks down under heat. So it will literally melt out like wax. Whereas dielectric grease and the grease that's inside of our fittings and stuff here, so a lot of times in like our irrigation fittings, you have either yellow or red grease that's in there, and it can take high temperatures because sometimes even on an irrigation system where it's a 24 volt going through that line, that can still heat up if there's any kind of arcing in there, if the wires aren't connected tightly or anything. And so that grease would just melt out normally. So no, Vaseline is not a good one to use in there.
Would you you ever use like a liquid rubber type product, like to coat everything, like you said, using these things?
It gets, so if we're going, let's say you're coming out like in a tree, okay, and we're gonna do downlighting out of a tree. Instead of using the liquid rubber, you can go to Altex, the computer company, and they sell these heat shrink sleeves in all different sizes. So, but at that point, we get out of using the wire nuts because you're not gonna put a heat shrink over a wire nut. So you have to use a metal crimp clamp in there. You crimp the wires together, put your sleeve over it, and then heat it up. Now, there's an issue with that. If your connection is close to your lights, heat transfers when you heat up that heat shrink. Again, the worst thing for LED lighting is heat. So if that copper wire pulls heat to that LED, you'll burn it out. So, yeah. When we have any of the aquascape lights or anything, any light, doesn't matter. Most of them will come with between 15 and 20 foot leads that are on them. We never cut the wire off. We leave all that lead on there because there's a resistance on there. And they put that much wire on there, not only for adjustment and versatility in the pond, but there's also, it gives a certain resistance for that light. That way it doesn't burn out too fast. This will go into a little deeper into landscape lighting, but when we are measuring voltage from our transformer to our light fixture itself, and we measure it at the light fixture, we want about 10.5 volts. You can go up to 14 on an LED and you're fine. But the 10.5 is like your sweet point when we're measuring for lighting. So if you go to every one of your lights that you put in and you're about 10.5 at every one of those, plus or minus, maybe a watt here or there, or volt, then that's perfect. Then you'll get the longest lifespan out of your bulbs and out of your fixtures.
Stupid electrical question. Does the voltage drop a lot? Can you measure that? I mean, is that why?
Sure, absolutely.
Along the way?
Absolutely.
DC voltage. I'm more familiar with AC.
Okay.
The DC 24 volt, you say it drops to 14, or do they intentionally drop it down to 10 to 14?
No, so on a commercial transformer, like this one here, you'll have what they call a multi-tap transformer. So typically you'll go between 12 and 14 or 12 and 16 volts that you can put your wires on. That's gonna determine like how far your run is, right? Let's say you wanna go literally, from here to the street. Well, now we have to think wire sizing. Your standard wire sizes that we use in landscape lighting, commercial landscape lighting, is 12 volt or 12 gauge. But when we go to, let's say it's 100 yards, 150 yards down, we gotta go down to 10 gauge wire. We need to carry that power out there. Well, if I put that on a 12 volt tap on my transformer and I get all the way out there, even with 10 gauge wire, I'm gonna be like 5 or 6 volts by the time I get out there. So I need to move that wire now up to a higher tap on my transformer so that I can carry that voltage out there. So
start with a higher voltage to have a higher voltage.
Correct. In the old school days, when we were still using incandescent bulbs, we had to calculate wire size for voltage loss and all that stuff. So you also had to think about, okay, how am I going to wire that? Before, there were typically 3 different types of ways we would wire things. We do what's called a loop method, and you literally take your what we call home run, which is your main line coming off your transformer. We loop it around in a big circle, ties back into itself, and then you cut that all the way along the way. So what happens is your power source is in the center, and it's putting power out equally all the way around that loop. And then there was what's called a T method. So we'd find the center. Let's say we had 6 lights going across. We'd find that center point, we'd cut it right there, and there we'd wire in a piece of wire, and we'd go back to the transformer from there. Then the first 2 lights had the highest voltage, and as it went away, it would drop. So you'd have to calculate your wire that came from your transformer to that T point and make sure you had enough on there to create the resistance so that when you got to your first 2 lights, you were within your voltage range, and by the time you got to the ends, you were still at 10.5, 9.5, somewhere in there. So,
you got dim lights.
Correct. So you got really bright ones here, and you got really dim ones out here. And then you had the daisy chaining, where they just run a one wire from the transformer, run around all your landscape and everything, and just tie into it everywhere. So same thing, you'd get bright lights here, closest to the transformer, dim lights further away.
Wouldn't you compare like the transformer wattage and the size of the wire, right? I mean, So you could go.
No. Forget about the wattage. The wattage on the transformer is just how many lights you can put on that. The output of that transformer is what you're looking at. So your voltage output. So most of your outputs, let's say it's a Malibu transformer from Home Depot or whatever, they're typically 12, 14 volts that they're putting out. So once you go to a certain length, you're out of voltage, and you're going to start tripping that transformer. Rule of thumb is no matter what size your transformer is, you only use 80% of that total wattage of that transformer. Never exceed that. You can maybe go another 5 watts or so and you'll be okay. But when you start to really max that out, you're going to start tripping and you're going to start popping bulbs faster. And that's why we stick within that range and kind of that rule of thumb. LEDs have taken away a lot of that math, right? Because now on an LED bulb or a diode, you can go down to about 6.5 volts and that diode will still turn on. It will look visually different at that voltage, but it'll still turn on. Whereas an incandescent bulb, it would still be completely off. So now you can daisy chain and you can get away with it where you visually, our eyes can't see the difference in a normal spectrum on an LED. Whereas on an incandescent you can, because it'll get more yellow as it dimmed down. And now with the new technology, it's taken all that away. And it's more for homeowners, and that's where this has really been pushed. Landscapers, it's picked up a lot over the years, because for us, that's one of the quickest, easiest types of work we can do. And it's in and out, and you can put 12, 15 fixtures in within a couple hours, and your margins are very high when you're doing that. Lowe's, right now, from a homeowner standpoint, has probably got the best fixtures that are out there out of the box stores. They are carrying Kichler, and Kichler has been around for years on the interior side. They've done most of hanging fixtures for front porches, chandeliers, everything, and then they ventured off into the landscape lighting. And honestly, I don't know what the warranties are when it comes into the box stores, but when we buy commercial lighting, it's usually what they call limited lifetime warranties on most of them. So if it's a manufacturer's defect, they'll cover it. I'm partial to FX Luminaire. That's my favorite brand out there. I've used the Kichlers and FX and Vistas and all these other brands. That one seems to be a really solid fixture. FX Luminaire. Yeah, I'll show you
Is there a significance between the blue and the black adapters?
the wire nuts.
Yeah.
It's wire sizing. So it's just like if it was for interior electrical. I think I stopped it. Nope, I did. Sorry. Yeah, it's going to be based on how many number gauge wires can fit in that certain wire nut. The typical ones we use are the black and grays. Lowe's, they sell, I think they're blue. They just give you, I think, 2 or 3 different sizes. There's really small ones, kind of medium ones, and really big ones. So when you're using 10 gauge wire, you're using the larger wire nuts. 12 gauge wire, we're using mediums. FX Luminaire, that's the normal logo that is for that company. Whether it's powder coated aluminum, which is most of the fixtures you see in the stores, and most of the landscapers put those in because they're the most cost effective fixtures, it's a good product. The coating doesn't come off with our Texas heat. This has been around just as long as everyone else, but their coating tends to bubble and sometimes discolor a lot faster. The cool thing with Vista is that you have a color choice. And most of them have it, but Vista has the most color choices out there. And they give it to you like a little color wheel, as if you're picking paint for your walls, that you can get from one of the local suppliers. But Kichler, like I said, from Lowe's, Home Depot, for anyone do it like the regular DIY, that's the best one out there. The Malibu lights, they're cheap, right? They're able to be, if you're have, let's say, solar lights right now, Malibu's about the same intensity, it's about the same, quality. But if you just want something nice around your pond, those are the way to go. They've made it so that it's very simple. They just daisy chain in, and you put them around and plug in a transformer. But if you're wanting something for long term, then one of the like bottom brands or the top brands are the way to go for your pond. The store here for years, Shane sold Pond Max. For pretty much any customer that's had them in their pond for at least 5 years, you know, the bulbs are burnt out. You can go in and replace the boards, but the connections fail. I've talked to them directly, Pond Max, as you know, from a manufacturing standpoint, to things to correct and stuff. That's one of the lights that all your connections are made in the water, and that's where you have that male-female connection, screw them together, but nowhere does it ever tell you that you should put grease in there to protect those. You'll get the lifespan. Same with on the seals, on the caps for the lights. You go back in there, put silicone in there, and then put them back together. Now you'll save that light. We've had issues when people will bring them back in and say, hey, this failed under a year. We send it to the manufacturer. Nope, water got in it. Somebody opened it. Well, how do you prove that no one did open it? We don't know. That's why I like a sealed light. If it fails, it's manufacturer. If water got in it somehow, it's manufacturer, because you can't take it apart. So it took that factor out of it. And so from a sales standpoint, if I'm selling it at the store, I need a product that I know the manufacturer is going to stand behind and not give me crap about returning it if a customer comes in, because then it's going to make a bad name for us. So even on a retail standpoint, I have to go back and forth in which products to use. Now, if you have, like Marvin, you guys have more of a modern feature. Big waterfall comes over, you can't use some of the smaller lights or like the aquascape lights. If you hit them, they pop off those bases. So then you go into like a brass fixture, a brass weighted fixture, which someone like Easy Pro, even Kichler have these heavier duty brass commercial type fixtures. And they seal off with screws, and there's a big rubber seal inside, and they're really high quality fixtures. The difference is they're about 3 times more than a normal fixture. So, on the 3-watt lights, those ones are about, I think, $129 for the Aquascape. You get a brass fixture, and you're going to be paying $300 plus, especially if it comes from one of the higher end manufacturers. Again, if you have a larger feature and stuff, and you want something that's you just literally never worry about except once a year or something like that to replace that bulb, then that's what you go with, is one of the brass fixtures. They wire in the same way. They're still 12-volt systems, and it's pretty simple.
Calcium on them like that.
Sure. Any light out there, doesn't matter what it is. If there's glass, it's going to get calcium on it. So there's a maintenance, I'll go into that from a maintenance standpoint in a second. But general lighting's pretty simple. Your waterfalls, your steps, we usually are just facing, lights opposite. Every time we step up in a waterfall or a stream, we'll alternate the lights as it goes up in the way it looks. So you never get lights all coming from one direction all the way up. It looks very man-made at that point. So we try to do it as natural as possible when you're coming into streams and waterfalls and features. So alternating those lights, going all the way up, putting one a little closer to a fall, one a little further back, gives you a intensity difference. On houses, landscaping and stuff like that, that is the same way we factor in on houses. If you put a light on a house and it's really close to the house, you have a hot spot, what we call right there. So when you're looking at that picture of that house, your eye is automatically drawn to the brightest spot on that house. That's not what we want. So you pull your fixtures back from that wall a little bit and let just the light cascade all the way up, so it's one tone all the way from top to bottom. Now it creates a very balanced picture, and you don't have those bright spots every now and then on a whether it's a tree, a house, any kind of structure, waterfalls, or anything like that.
Is there a particular aesthetic that you want to use for like up lighting or down lighting? For an effect?
So with it, there's a couple things. So we go into the wattage of the bulb, And so if your typical watts that are going to come in, like your uplights, if you buy them from any irrigation company or lighting manufacturer, they're about 4.5 watts. That's a standard. It's equivalent to about a 20 watt fixture or a normal incandescent bulb. 4.5, 5.5, depends on who's making the bulbs. How it varies. But then you have to also think about the Kelvin, which is the warmness or whatever of that bulb. Most of them are 65K that we use, which is a normal daylight bulb, and it creates the best look on greenery and most structures until you get into like all white houses or very modern houses or structures. And then you look at the angle, the beam spread of that bulb. So when you're going to Lowe's, Home Depot, you can't get into any of that. So when we're ordering lights for houses or for structures or landscapes, I'm factoring all of that. So if I have a really wide wall, I'll go to a wider beam spread because I don't want to put 10 light fixtures across there, because then the cost has to jump, and now we're literally just wasting money. So you can go to less fixtures, change the bulb out to a wider beam, and now you cover that same thing. So if you're, again, I guess it depends on what you're trying to create. If you're trying to create like more what we call drama, then doing uplighting, staying with a lower voltage. If you're not, let's say you're on a 50, 60 foot tree, then you have to go to a higher wattage bulb, because you'll never get that canopy to cascade light over, or what we call spill lighting, because there's reflection off of whether it's eaves of your house, the canopy of a tree, in a normal structure. When the light goes up, it bounces back down. Visually, we can't really tell, but that's where we get all our shadowing and stuff on the ground. So if you drive through Alamo Heights, Terrell Hills, and they've got all these 100-plus-year-old oaks and stuff out there, and you see the old style green lights, it looks almost eerie, like you're going through a cemetery at night, because they're all in the trees, they're all shining down, but they have a green hue. And so you get this really cool shadowing on the ground. Those were mercury vapor lights. Super expensive. You had to run them off of high voltage. You have your own transformer for every fixture or per two fixtures. Well, now with the LEDs, you don't get that green hue anymore, but that's where we play with the wattages, right? So you go to, ours are usually 4.5, 8.5 to 12.5. Those are our three sizes we play with. The 12.5s are usually equivalent to those, 75 or 100 watt incandescents, but LEDs are much more intense. The output or the PAR rating they put out is a lot higher than a normal, old style incandescent bulb.
Would you could soften it by going to a softer, like a yellow, with a lower
the Kelvin?
temperature? Yeah.
You can, sure, but if you start playing too much with the Kelvins, ratings on them, you start getting different looks throughout the property.
Right. You want to keep
And
it consistent.
if you keep the same warmness, just like in your house, if you're going to use a natural daylight bulb or one of the cool whites, the cool white is more blue. You'll see some of your solar lights that you buy, $5 lights or whatever at Lowe's or the local store. They're kind of like that blue color for the LEDs. Well, when you put that blue hue up to anything green, it looks horrible. It just, they don't blend, it doesn't look nice, there's no highlight to it. It looks like a runway, basically, when you put those in. That was the standard, that was kind of what they used to use, is that color all the time, years ago. Then somebody realized that if I take a dauber of yellow dye and put it over that diode, it turns it white. And that's why all your diodes are yellow, because it's a coloring thing, and that's how they get the white light from them now. To get that ambiance and that drama in your landscape, it's all about the wattage of the bulbs. So on trees, small trees, we stick with that lower wattage. When we're doing, this is a good one for houses. When you're getting into houses in landscaping and stuff, just this picture, the idea is to highlight the investment. That was 20 years ago when I was taught how to do lighting. It was always highlight the investment. Everything else to that is secondary. So we use the 35 watt equivalents, which are our 8.5s, on the house itself. And so where the backlighting gets a little bit brighter, stuff like that. There's another house on here that I'll show you. It's kind of a harder picture. But this house here, the trees are dimmer, of course. Come on, Gary, get this together. I think I stopped it this time. We'll see. The house itself will have brighter lights. Those will have 35 watt equivalents. The trees will go down to 20 watt equivalents, which are the 4.5s.
That's much cooler than the other one that you were showing.
So, but look at the color of the structures themselves, right? Same exact Kelvin. The bulbs are no different. Yes, there's no difference in the Kelvin, but you have a brownish tan house versus the white stucco. And that's where you get the intensity differences. So we have to think as installers, what are we looking at when we're on a white background? We can't go to those 8.5 and 12.5 bulbs because now it will look like Wrigley Field out there. And it's gonna be way too bright, and then you're gonna be upsetting your neighbors and everyone else. So we stay with the lower wattage bulbs. And now we also get the drama, the intensity, the nice picture by using whether it's path lights around the beds or up lights on things. And the fountain in particular on this one, that bulb was put in the front on purpose so that it shadowed that back wall, because you have a backdrop of another garage and it creates that drama back there. So on this particular house, which is in Stone Oak, there's a lot of shadowing coming off the trees and the reflection on the house. So it's a really dramatic picture when you're looking at this house at night. And that was one of the reasons for staying with the low wattage. You just didn't need it because that stucco brightens everything up even more.
Now, on the one in the lower left
This-
corner, how many, is there like 4 lights on that one, or how many lights would you say are
3.
3 of them?
Yeah,
And
there's-
are there backlit coming out off of
So there's one right here. There's another one in the corner. And then there's one up here under light behind here. This one, for whatever reason, that we didn't have the one shining up for underneath.
You were saying
but-
typically you like to reverse them, like
It depends on the angle. Though for us, so
But are they coming from behind, or are they?
no, this is straight from the front on here. So
Dramatic, that's
yeah, and this was a snippet of the big picture. So it's kind of hard on this one because you also have other lights that are coming from other directions, from the pond area and stuff. One of these, this was a stock. This is from Aquascape. I was just showing you the colors that you can get, but oops.
That was a good one showing the different positions top left.
Yeah, so you can get coming up, this is a narrow stream going up. So you don't have, depending on what was on that side, you can see this one's coming in this way, the next one's coming across, and then there's another one up top. And then again, this one's kind of backlit and front lit. So, and then you have them down in here too, shining across, but away from you, nothing coming at you when you're looking at these. This one was a little, the picture itself, this is in Kerrville. We only lit the waterfall on here because the pond itself was all liner. So there was nowhere to put lights. Otherwise they would be too shallow. You'd get no effect from them. One of the biggest things with water features, some people don't like to look at night of their pond itself when you light up the water, because you can see every particle floating in your water at that point. So it kind of tells you how good your filter system is. I mean, honestly, that's, if you have a lot of floaties, then you know you're not catching a lot of that in your filter.
I have a question. How many people in here have lights in their barn?
I'm gonna lighting over the pond. Is that partial credit?
Right.
Well, we were just on a property that had that. So for years, they just put them around their pond, they angled them down, and they just kind of shot across the water, and kind of however far it got out to that waterfall is what they got. And then we changed it out, and we start putting, the smaller fixtures. A lot of your fixtures, even at Lowe's or Home Depot, they're big, and it's hard to hide them. And if you don't have a lot of rock work and stuff in your pond, it's gonna be very difficult to hide some of those. So with all the wiring and all that, it's a challenge. Yeah.
Well, when you're doing the lighting, you always want the light to be shooting away from where you're viewing.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
what if your pond's, what if it gets dark? You don't have any definition on the backside of your pond then?
Sure. So if you, depending on what you have,
You have light shooting up or something.
yeah. So you can, I'm telling you, I quit. Hey, I'm gonna put you in charge of this one. I'm kidding. That's the look I just got. You see that? I really did stop that. I know I did.
But for you, it's cheaper just to buy the light company, buy the company.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
So on the back side, if you have area that's back there, you can use a standard uplight for back there and create a little more drama, depending on what's back there. It depends on what you're reflecting. If you're on a back where a fence, you can highlight off the fence and you'll get some spill lighting coming off that, so you can create some depth.
Outside of the, not in the water, but on the outside.
Yes.
Of the pond.
Yeah. And what was your, then I'm not understanding what you asked me then.
No, I'm just wondering, how do you get some definition in the pond? Because mine's pretty wide.
Okay.
It's my pond. And if I put it all, I put some lights in, I'm trying some different things, but I put some lights on the front side from the viewing side, and it only shoots out to maybe about a third of the distance of the pond. So you
Gotcha.
can't see anything on the back.
How deep is it?
It's not very deep. It's probably about 3-4 feet.
Do you have rock on your walls, or is it liner only?
It's a rock and liner, so it's kind of an interesting situation.
Oh, you have rock around the top and then liner on the inside.
Yeah. And
Okay.
what I do is I have those brass,
Yeah.
brass lights. So
Sure.
I can set them down there anywhere inside and just have the lights.
Yeah, and that's why I'm asking if you had rock, because that's the only other way, because you can angle those brass lights and you can put them against that back wall and create that, angle
shoot it to
them, still keep it away from you, but shoot it on the wall back
so
there.
Put it in, and then rather than having it shooting to the water.
No, have your ones on your water up front that are shining out on your front wall, but then put a couple more on your back wall at the bottom, shining up and away from you. So depending on what kind of lights you have, the brass ones, some of them will have a shield that cover that top of the fixture. So if you have some sort of a shield, you won't see it as it's shining up. That shield will block that, so the light is only going away from you.
Water lily pots too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Almost like those are.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try that.
And light up
That's a
individual
good
water
idea.
lilies like they're trees.
Yep.
We have a question. Do the lights attract snakes? Do the lights attract bugs, which then attract snakes?
So if you have fish and you have water, you attract snakes, right? I mean, that's probably the best answer for that. No, your lights, your light's not going to attract any more wildlife than what would normally come out at night. Your raccoons are nocturnal, so they can see at night. So if you're getting anything over there, the difference of what's attracting the snakes is food source, water source, and the heat. So if your water temperature's up and those snakes are out and about hunting, they're going to come. At night, because your temperatures at night normally will drop a little bit, even in the summertime a little bit. So they'll usually hide during the nighttime no matter what. But if you happen to have a snake coming out, and you see one at night, well, it's probably passing by. I mean, we find them out here all the time. She found a coral snake out here, and I don't know, we were probably 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night. What's it? No, I can't have them in here unless I have a license for them. You can't. I can't have anything venomous unless you have a state license for it. So I've gotten garter snakes out here, but yeah.
Is it true that motion lights will spook away raccoon?
Until they get used to it.
Yeah. Now, so it's no different than if you put a heron statue and you're trying to ward off blue herons, but you never move it. Eventually, the heron realizes the bird never moves, and it gets there and gets your fish. So no. The shadowing and stuff like that will spook a raccoon, because I mean, like I'll flip on my back porch lights because my dogs will go crazy because the raccoons are trying to get the dog food, and I'll flip on the lights and they'll be like, huh? And they'll just kind of look up and never move. So it really until they see some sort of a shadow move by or something like that, they're never going to move. No, they're pretty brazen.
I've got a raccoon, especially during the winter now that it gets darker. I've been picking, there's like 4, it's 2 adults and 2 babies. They enjoyed all the dead fish. But I was outside feeding the fish and turtles, and of course it was like 6 o'clock but dark. And we call him Ricky.
Ricky named him.
Yeah, he's the smaller one. He got up on the other, it's all above ground. He got up on the back side of the pond, came around and got on, it's like a cement flat place in the pond where it's only a couple inches deep. Sat there and ate fish food while I was putting the fish food in.
So
And
it's
not scared at all.
raccoons are kind of funny because in our experience, if the water touches their belly,
Yeah.
they won't go in it.
Yeah.
But if it's up to their legs, like halfway, they'll walk all the way around it. No problem at all. They don't like tread through water though, because there's no depth perception to the raccoon. They can't tell how deep it is, so they're always cautious. So they'll walk on small shelves or like you're saying, and where it can just kind of, it knows it's secure. But we've watched them on the cameras, and they'll reach in or they'll tap the water, and the fish will come up and they'll grab one. They're super smart.
Same things we do to get our koi to come over.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing. They're very intelligent in what they do, but nothing with lighting.
I was just going to ask with lighting, because we haven't gotten there yet. I was told years ago you don't want your lights at the bottom of the pond because it messes with the koi. You want the lights at the top. No?
No, there's nothing to do with that. So over the years of doing this now, there's been a lot that I've heard that people would tell people that isn't remotely the same. Goes into the same way of construction of ponds and things like that. But no, from a lighting standpoint, we put lights from the bottom. Most of our ponds are 3 foot plus deep. So you'll have lights in the bottom bowl, the medium level, upper level, and then in your waterfalls. The koi aren't going to be affected by it. They're going to settle. You'll see them at night settle to the bottom no matter what. We're not keeping them up, and it's like us, keeping our bedroom light on or anything like that. So it's never stressed out any difference. Now, there's 2 different worlds, as you guys all know now, with koi. There's people that want to show koi, and then we got the ones that are more ornamental, pretty backyard koi. The idea for building the pond is the same. The whole balance, it's all about filter and balance with the koi ponds. Lighting is just another aesthetic enjoyed at night. That's the only reason to putting it in there. We have no real major benefits to it. LED lighting doesn't put off a lot of heat. So in the old days, you would see koi, goldfish, they'd go by the lights at night because it was warmer, because they're using incandescent bulbs. Those fixtures would heat up. So a little bit of a benefit, old days that we're using those. Short term, the bulbs burn out faster. There's not as good of warranties. You're replacing them more often. They're just not as cost efficient. But now it is literally more for your enjoyment than anything else, and neighbors or entertaining or anything. But we don't have a lot of benefit to what it does. People are afraid, the animals are going to see the koi. The animals at night, if they're eating at night, they can see them no matter what. They already see them. Yeah, so it doesn't. You're not intensifying it. You're not helping them. They already know they're there. They can smell them. They can hear them. They can feel them. I mean, it's totally different. But with like I said, the only downside to lighting your pond is that you see the particles in it. And if you can look past most of that, because most of us have pretty good filtrations and some sort of filter media or something that's catching it, it works and it still looks really nice.
Just one question on
Go ahead.
lights and koi. So, because I know some, especially the RGBs, have like discotheque mode with
Yep.
the flash.
Yep.
Have you seen that be an issue?
No.
Like with the ponds?
Because we never make it change colors.
Right.
Most people hate it. Where you see, okay, I'm gonna skip this one. Let me go back to that color one. Where you see ponds, whether it's this one, I don't know if I have any other colored ones on here. I don't think I did. Colored ponds, most people don't like them.
And the light doesn't go as...
It doesn't go as far. It doesn't brighten up the water as much. Let's say you're gonna put colored lights on your pond, and you want one section to be purple, another one to be magenta, another one to be blue. You have to have 3 separate controllers for that. You can have one transformer, but each of those systems has to have a different controller. Now you can take what you're talking about, like the RGB. All of your color lights are, like I said before, are RGB. So you can. That's how they get 15, 20 different colors, because they. Correct. White is more yellow in there. But if you want different colors, then you have to go and have a separate controller for each of those systems. I've literally in the last 7 years, I've had one customer do a colored light set. That's it. They don't look as good at night. If you're typically the younger, generation, younger couple, stuff like that, they want something cool in their backyard. They've got colored lights on their hot tub or their pool. They want it to match. That was the person that I dealt with. That's what he wanted. He wanted it all to match everything else. He was a tech guy, so he wanted to do everything from his phone. And Aquascape allows us to do that. Aquascape, it's all off of an app, so you can sit there and be cool to your friends and family and change your colors.
But after that party, you don't go outside.
No, it is kind of neat because we have a couple other clients that have had lights in their yard for landscape lighting. In particular, FX Luminaire makes a Z series light that is all colored, and the white is white.
Yes.
It is, and they're one of the few companies that actually do that. But in your landscape, it's a full-on platform on your phone or tablet. And you can change, all of your lights because it's all zoned, and it's called they're called ZD lights for zoning and dimming. So you can dim down your zones, you can intensify your zones. Now we're not worried about wattages of bulbs or fixtures anymore. Now it's all done off of that app, and they're very expensive. So one uplight, typically for a ZD fixture, is about $240. So when you start talking about 12, 15, 20 fixtures, it adds up quick. And then you got a $1,000 transformer that has to control all of that. But that transformer, you're putting your location into it, like GPS location into it. It's very advanced. It does. You can do different light shows. You can have it come on in different intensities, 10, 15 different times. I mean, it's a really advanced system. The houses that we have a house out by Fair Oaks that his whole house is computerized. And FX Luminaire makes a platform that can integrate with that house so that now his control around his house, he can control all of his outdoor landscape lighting as well. So there's a lot of very advanced systems out there when it comes into the landscape lighting. It just gets down to cost at that point. But thinking basic, I wanted to go to the second slide, which was this one.
No, my big thing was, those automatic sensors for like when the sun goes down, the lights come on. That was a good.
Okay.
Turn it on.
So,
If you've never seen a pond with water lilies at night, that's when uplighting the water lily and seeing the pads, they're shadowed on top.
Yep.
And the flowers, especially like a night blooming water lily out there, everything is uplit from the bottom. Like to me, that's even better than.
And shadowing in water is different than shadowing on the ground. Shadowing on the ground, when we uplight something from underneath, like a tree or whatever, it will spill light over, and that's where you get some of that patterns and stuff on the ground. Where when we had this is perfect. When we had the solar eclipse, did anyone see that?
Yeah, we have.
Okay, so did you see the patterns that it left on like the sides of cars? Yeah, and on the ground. So same idea with uplighting landscape lighting and how it spills over. Yes, and you'll get in that. So any movement up top, it reflects on the bottom, and you get that shifting and stuff in your landscape as well. Going into what you were saying about like whether it's the dusk dawn sensors or anything like that. Nowadays, when everyone's trying to be energy efficient, cost efficient, everything, we've really steered a lot away from dusk dawn sensors. People don't want them on for 8 hours, 9 hours.
2 hours, 4 hours.
Well, that depends on the transformer. So the transformers will have that little slide bar or a dial, and it'll say 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. And that'll be, once it turns on, it'll shut off in whatever hour you set it for. But your normal, on a regular light commercial transformer, it is just a photocell that's on there. So sun up, sun down, it turns on or off. That's it. So now, because this is the only ones we usually put in, unless we're going to a 60-watt transformer because we only got 5 or 6 lights in a pond, then we'll get something like one of the little Lowe's or Home Depot, Hamilton, or one of those type of transformers. But the majority of systems we use these.
Do those plug in, do those have a plug or do those hardwire into your existing?
No, it's a plug. So it's a regular plug. They're typically, the ones we use are stainless steel.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about them discoloring or anything. You can get silver or gray, you can get black if you're blending into a landscape so you can't see it. But that one there, we use analog timers. For some of our older clients, they don't want to get into a digital timer. And you got to get in there and press buttons and set times and readjust and stuff like that. So the only thing we worry about with an analog timer is daylight savings. That's it. And it is literally either a red clip or a green clip. Yeah. So, or a loosened power. Yeah, exactly. So it's very simple and just very basic. And so these are the typical ones that we go to.
Could you also, I don't know, I'm just thinking, you go smart plugs?
That's what I was
Sure.
gonna
Throw a
say.
smart plug in there and actually
Absolutely.
control it?
And then you can
Sure. Yeah. Any of the Google Home plugs or anything like that.
Are they dimmable too, like those
No.
smart plugs? Okay,
No.
so-
So
It's just on off.
yeah, your normal lighting or LED lighting is not dimmable. You have to have a bulb specific, like the FX Luminaire ZD bulbs. Yeah.
Do the aquascapes dim?
No, the colored ones do, but not the white ones. They're not dimmable. If you try, people have put a dimmer in line. If you go to dim down that LED light, let's say an aquascape light, it will ruin that light eventually.
Not dimmable.
Yeah, because it will cut the voltage because you're creating resistance in that line with that dimmer, but you will cut that voltage and you burn up that light a lot sooner.
They're not. It's like some of the first LED bulbs that you would replace in your house. If you had a dimmer on there, they'd strobe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's-
And that was the lack of voltage going to them. And that's why I said now, most of them can go down to 6.5 or so volts. Kichler, we did a seminar with Kichler, and he actually had an adjustable volt or transformer on there, and it got down to 4.5. It was still dim, but it was on. And your incandescence wouldn't have gone maybe down to 7, if that, before they just shut off. And so the efficiency is super high on LEDs, and most of us have them in our houses now. So and the cost saving is pretty intense. Calcium?
On the bulbs.
Well, on the glass. On the glass itself, on any of the fixtures.
So these bulbs are not glass?
Well, the fixtures themselves, it's the glass that covers the diode that's in there. That's the only thing that gets on them. You're not going to get calcium on the bulb. If you got calcium on the bulb, you got more problems than calcium because now you got water coming into your fixture. So the glass itself, though, typically if it's on there, we'll take a small razor or something and scrape it off. You can break it down. I mean, we had like the fountain acids and stuff like that.
I get a lot of calcium on it, and I just use vinegar.
That's it. It's the same way on a fixture. If we were talking about like, if you're using vinegar in a small, let's say you had a patio pond, right? And you tried to use like soaking your fixtures or putting too much in there, you got to worry a little bit in there, like, from aquariums, it'll change your pH. And what we do in this stuff, you don't ever have to worry about any of that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this one here is probably the big one for if anyone's going to sell, like keep their pond, sell their house and everything. Landscape lighting, pond lighting, anything like that, it is one of the only things you can do to your yard in the exterior of your house when it comes into upgrades like this, that you almost have 100% ROI on it. That landscaping installation, you'll never get back what you put into a landscape. It just you can't add that to your sales of your house. But landscape lighting you can, especially if you have somebody do it. That's where you benefit the most. And then yeah.
If we're not in the mood to do it ourselves, you offer that.
Call me.
That's why he woke up on us.
No.
So we do pond lighting and landscape lighting.
Yeah. So.
Fixed pool lighting that doesn't work.
No. Pools are probably one of the things I'll never touch. We'll replace filter systems, repair lines, stuff like that for pools as long as it's right at the filter systems. But you never know what pool builders have done. You don't know where they run lines. There's no schematics for them half the time. There's no standard. Yeah. Yeah. So on your pool lights, Typically, there's a housing that was in the walls, like a bowl, essentially. And then that light itself bolts onto that. Yeah, but on your LEDs, there's a cover over that, and it's a housing. And so that if you ever have to replace that LED, on the back of that housing, that's where the conduit that comes out of your pond or your pool goes to. You're able to feed and pull that old LED out and fish a new one through when you have to replace that. But typically, you're usually going to have to either drain or go down with a,
If they're installed correctly, they have at least 6 feet of extra wire
behind it, correct.
So you can take the whole housing out to like replace
That's so on those when you used to use the old halogen bulbs, you could pull it out and then replace that halogen and then put it back down there. Yes, because then they had that ring. You just got to be able to put that ring back on there and go from there.
Normally do it in steel.
Yes.
2 questions. Solar or electric, which is your preference?
Electric.
Electric.
Yeah, because
And the other question is that, is there like little float, this is just for decoration purposes, floaters, little lights, any recommendations on that?
Amazon. Because that gets out of the normal sales realm / commercial realm. Those are specialty lights. Those are going to be for your homeowners, things like that. There's nothing on a commercial scale that no company that we come across that sell anything like that, like floaters. Yeah.
I have a lot of those, and they get algae on them, which is one thing, but the calcium buildup on them eventually.
Yeah.
They're not really designed to be. You can scrub them off a couple of times, but eventually.
It's not glass. It's typically some sort of either a Lexan coating on it, like a plexiglass. And the minute you start scrubbing and scraping, you scratch them all up, and they go to hell pretty quick.
And I would probably just use it if I had company over and that's it.
Do that, or they like my solar fountains, they last a couple of years.
Yeah.
And normally like 50, you can get them on a good day on eBay for like $15. I found some at Marshalls for $5, but
Yeah, that's you have to go to, like you're saying, like eBay, Marshalls, Amazon, stuff like that for those type of things. The other thing, real quick, on this particular slide, the big one all the years of doing landscape lighting was safety. For a lot of homeowners, let's say it's single women, older ladies, anything like that, this is huge from a safety standpoint. If your mom or grandmother has a house and you're concerned for her safety, landscape lighting is one of the safest things you can put on a house, and you'll get insurance for it. Yes, because so depending on the company and stuff like whoever you have, landscape lighting is actually a security system for your house. So